In August 1947, 10 million people were forced to leave their homes, their cities, and their entire lives behind. They could carry almost nothing, but some of them carried recipes. And one of those recipes became the most beloved street food in a nation of 1.4 billion people. Welcome back to The Curious Monk for another explainer. Normally I'd start by walking you through our agenda for today, but we're going to skip all that because today we aren't just looking at a recipe. We're unpacking a profound narrative of survival, heartbreak, and honestly, an absolutely incredible culinary legacy. Let's just dive right into it. As we just touched on, that quote captures the emotional reality of the 1947 partition of India. It's hard to even wrap your head around, right? It was this totally cataclysmic event that just tore families apart overnight. And yet, out of all that unimaginable devastation, a beautiful culinary symbol of pure resilience was born. And here it is. This right here perfectly illustrates what we're talking about today. On one side, you've got these thick, dark, intensely spiced chickpeas. That's the chole. And on the other, the bhatura. It's this golden fermented flatbread that puffs up perfectly the second it hits the hot oil. Together, Chole Bhature. Nowadays, it's pretty much the ultimate Indian comfort food. But back in post-partition Delhi, this hot, filling, and incredibly affordable meal literally brought comfort and sustenance to a completely broken, grieving city. Section 1. The ancient ancestor dish. So, before this meal helped rebuild a broken Delhi, its core ingredients actually traveled through thousands of years of history. Take the chickpea, for example. It's ancient. We're talking cultivated in the Indus Valley civilization as early as 2600 BCE. Then you fast forward thousands of years to the Mughal era, and you've got trade routes bringing Middle Eastern, Persian, and Turkish cooking techniques straight into the region. They blended with local Indian spices, creating these really sophisticated chickpea curries. But actually, the true direct ancestor of our modern dish, that didn't even show up until the early 20th century in a city called Rawalpindi in undivided Punjab. They called it Pindi Chole. Now, you really have to notice the sensory profile of this original Pindi Chole, because it was completely different from those bright, tomato-heavy curries you might be picturing right now. This was dark, almost black actually, and intensely tangy. To get that rich, dark hue without dropping money on expensive ingredients, Punjabi cooks were incredibly clever. They boiled the chickpeas with black tea leaves, or sometimes dried amla, which is Indian gooseberry. And instead of tomatoes, they used anardana. Those are dried pomegranate seeds, and they give it this really sharp, almost gritty sourness. Plus, it was often made completely without onions or garlic. It was just a rugged, rustic dish designed perfectly to fuel the hardworking, agrarian lifestyle of the Punjab heartland. Section 2. The Partition Exodus. Okay, so the true defining moment for this rugged, rustic dish came in 1947. When British India was divided, a massive, heartbreaking exodus began. Millions of refugees fleeing violence in West Punjab and Lahore flooded straight into Delhi. They arrived exhausted, traumatized, and, for the most part, totally destitute. So, to survive, many of them turned to the absolute only thing they still possessed, their culinary heritage. They started cooking Pindi Chole right on the streets of Delhi. For people who had literally lost everything, this wasn't just a cheap meal, it was emotional solace on a plate. It was a taste of the homes they've been forced to leave behind, acting as this powerful, flavorful anchor in a scary, uncertain new world. Section 3. A Tale of Two Refugees. So you might be wondering, how exactly did Pindi Chole get paired up with that puffy bhature bread? Well, it's actually the result of this extraordinary coincidence. It centers on two refugees who arrived in Delhi and, completely independently of each other, introduced this exact pairing at the exact same time. It's wild. On one side, you have Peshori Lamba. He fled Lahore and somehow managed to set up the iconic fine dining quality restaurant in Connaught Place, bringing the dish to Delhi's more upscale crowd. But then on the other hand, you have Sita. He fled West Punjab with his son, and he didn't have a restaurant at all. Nope. He simply wandered the crowded back lanes of a Harganj with a bicycle and a modest little wooden food cart. And the absolutely crucial detail here is this number, 12. Specifically, 12 annas. To put that into perspective, that is less than a single rupee. That was the incredibly humble price for Sitaram's very first plates of Chole Bhature. You see, for him, this wasn't about building some massive business empire, at least not at first. It was purely about survival. He hand-kneaded the bhature dough himself, slow-cooked the chole in secret spices, literally just to make enough money to feed his family the next day. But man, just look at what that little 12 on a cart turned into today. The modern, full-train meal they serve at Sitaram Diwan features this brilliant little twist. Sitaram started stuffing his bhature with paneer. It added this heft and flavor that customers just couldn't resist. What started as one guy selling food off a bicycle cart just to stay alive, it blossomed into a legendary multi-generational institution that is still standing in Paharganj today. I mean, people will literally line up around the block just to get a taste of that history.
Section 4. The Dhaba Food Revolution.
Of course, a street food this good didn't stay confined to Delhi's back lanes for very long. As India gained its independence, the highway network started expanding at a rapid pace. And right alongside those new roads, you saw the sprouting of dhahabas, these scrappy roadside eateries. Think about it. Truckers and travelers, they needed food that was cheap, served hot, incredibly filling, and obviously delicious. Chole Bhature basically ticked every single one of those boxes. The dhabas adopted it enthusiastically, giving the dish a passport to travel all across the country. It really democratized the flavor, taking it from a regional survival food to the absolute, undisputed default dish of the Great Indian Highway. Section 5. A global culinary icon.
But the journey definitely didn't stop at the edge of the highway. Over the decades, it just kept expanding, pushing far beyond its northern Punjabi roots. By the 1990s, the whole thing had become a nationwide phenomenon. Today, you can travel all the way down to South India, which, by the way, is a region with its own fiercely proud and completely distinct culinary heritage. And you'll find traditional Udupi restaurants proudly serving their own versions of Chole Bhature. And they'll absolutely claim theirs is the tastiest, for sure. A dish that was born out of the horrific displacement of North Indian refugees managed to successfully cross the cultural North-South divide and become a genuinely beloved national treasure.
I mean, its cultural weight is so heavy today that the internet actually willed a whole holiday into existence. October 2nd is now widely celebrated by fans as International Chole Bhature Day. And what's wonderfully, kind of hilariously ironic about this is that October 2nd is also Gandhi Jayanti, the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi. So while the day honors Gandhi's values of extreme simplicity and Sattvic living, food lovers all over the world spend it celebrating a dish that is unapologetically rich, intensely spiced, and very deeply fried. But food historians will tell you it's actually incredibly fitting. It's a celebration of a triumph born entirely from trauma.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. The next time you see this amazing dish, I want you to remember the journey it took to get to that plate. From the ancient Indus Valley, to the bustling, dusty streets of Rawalpindi, to the crowded, desperate refugee camps of a newly partitioned Delhi. It really makes you wonder, right? What untold histories of survival and resiliency are hiding right there in your own favorite comfort foods? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer here on The Curious Monk. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll see you next time. Because when you really look at the history, every plate of Chole Bhature is a monument to the people who lost everything and still found a way to feed a nation.